Some days when you're at Kings Island, the clouds come together, everything goes dim, lightning begins to strike, rain begins to fall, and all your favorite rides shut down. But what's the process for that sort of thing? Hello, everybody. Alongside Don Helbig, I'm Ryan Sir, and this is Tower Topics.
Tower Topics is a podcast by Kings Island fans for Kings Island fans because that's who we are and that's who we care about.
Yeah, so we kind of got inspired by the fact that there was some pretty bad storms in the Cincinnati area last night. You and I were at a Reds game and dodged it, at least that part of it. But Kings Island has a unique situation because the ride shut down in the rain, but it's not necessarily every ride shuts down in every storm. So let's start with this. Like in your experience, how does Kings Island prepare for inclement weather?
Well, Kings Island, they're what is called storm ready. They've got that recognition from the National Weather Service. This means that the park meets a rigorous set of criteria from weather warning communications to emergency planning, which proves its commitment to safety. So safety has been, is now, is always going to be the number one priority at Kings Island. And when inclement weather is approaching, potential storms, they're ready for it and they have a plan in place to take care of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, it's broken down into different phases.
It is.
They try to continue operation as much as possible, but what's kind of like phase one of the whole process?
Well, phase one would be, and this is one of the things too, when you go to the park, sometimes, the sun might be shining and you wonder why some of these rides are going down. Well, that's because the park, they know that that threat of severe weather is coming in because they've got this weather tracking station with radars, wind monitors, other machines that track storms, long before they reach the park and can impact the rides and attractions. But phase one would be suspend operation when lightning or storm system is present at least 15 miles out. So that's why you might be at the park, looks good to you, and you're wondering why all these rides are going down, but they know 15 miles out, and those storms can hit pretty quick. So the taller attractions, we're talking about like a Windseeker, Drop Tower, the Eiffel Tower, Invertigo, Banshee, Orion, Diamondback, those are all going to close during this phase. That's phase one. And the reason being, since they are the tallest attractions, it would take the longest amount of time to evacuate guests in an emergency situation. So, say that you don't want to have somebody going up the lift hill of Orion and all of a sudden, for whatever reason, the ride stops and you're trying to get guests off the ride and then, having to walk down that lift hill and then here comes a thunderstorm rolling through. So you want to, be prepared in advance and make sure that you've got everybody off that ride before the weather hits.
Yeah, I guess it probably would be horrifying to be walking people off of 287-foot tall piece of steel during a lightning storm, and in the falling rain too. So beyond that, you said 15 miles out. What's the next phase? What's phase two?
Well, phase two, this would occur, when lightning is present about 10 miles out, and or there may be visible lightning strikes. The rest of the coasters, this would include like Adventure Express, Backlot Stunt Coaster, the Beast, the Racer, the Bat, Great Pumpkin Coaster, Woodstock Express, Mystic Timbers. Those are all going to suspend operation under phase two. And the taller rides that you have out there, we're talking about flat rides, the taller flat rides like Congo Falls, Delirium. You got Franklin's Flyers, Kite Eating Tree, Charlie Brown's Rushing River Log Ride, Surf Dog, Whirlybirds, Whitewater Canyon. Those are going to go down on the phase two plan.
Okay.
And then depending on the characteristics of the storm, you're going to see Soak City. They're going to close with either phase one or phase two rides, just depending on the characteristics of that storm.
They typically evacuate Soak City if the storm is bad enough, right?
Right. Yeah, you don't want anybody in the water park.
Okay. And then phase three?
Phase three is when the remaining flat rides that are not under a permanent structure suspend operation. This is when lightning has been spotted 5 miles from the park. So we're talking about like Linus's Beetlebugs, Off-Road Rally, Space Buggies, Snoopy and the Red Baron, the Character Carousel, Sally Seaplanes, Charlie Brown's Wind Up, the Scrambler, the Monster, Viking Fury, Linus's Launcher, Zephyr, Peanuts 500, Kings Mills Antique Autos. I mean, you get the picture of all these smaller flat rides. Cargo Loco, would be in that group. They're going to shut down under the Phase 3 plan when you're looking and there's lightning within 5 miles of the park.
Okay, so at this point, lightning is almost certainly visible then from within the park, given the geography and stuff. And then the final phase is Phase 4, correct?
Phase 4, correct. And this is when the indoor attractions are undercover. Think Flight of Fear, Boo Blasters on Boo Hill. They're under permanent structures. You have Joe Cool's Dodge and School. You have the Grand Carousel. They're going to suspend operation with strong storms over the park. That threat of real severe weather. That's when you're going to see those go down. And then before the rides reopen, all indications must be that the storm and lightning have passed and it's safe to do so. And then once the ride shut down, they got to go back through the safety protocols and the test cycles and that they do in the morning before the park opens.
Yeah. And then you get something like this, a nice rainbow for those of you who are just watching. I was looking for rain photos. I looked for rain in my like Apple Photos thing, and I just got a bunch of rainbows. But I've been to the park several times when there's been some pretty darn scary storms. Not the least of which were twice the Eiffel Tower has been struck while I was there, and once Drop Tower was struck. But I think that Drop Tower being struck is probably the louder of the two. It sounds like a firework going off. It's that cracking kind of noise.
It does. But when you get these big storms and that, the park, they really are well trained in the safety department to make sure that the guests are safe. And it can be a little frustrating for guests when you don't understand why a ride is closing when it looks like, hey, the sun's shining. Well, they know 15 miles out and at the rate of speed that's traveling, it's not going to be like that in a few minutes. So always keep in mind that the park is keeping your safety top of mind when these things happen. And in the event of a thunderstorm or that, seek shelter inside a shop or the fest house, a place like that, so you're not out roaming around in the park.
Absolutely. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's very informative. It's I've been to the park during some pretty bad storms, and I've never once felt unsafe. I was actually there one time in 2022 when I remember it wasn't like a shelter in place kind of thing, but it was pretty windy and pretty it was kind of there as far as hey, you should probably go in the basement kind of thing, but it never kind of crossed that line. But all those banners on the light totems around the fountain they were on the ground. The sign for the French Corner fell. It was pretty scary, but everybody did their thing, and everyone.
Now you mentioned photos of the storms or after the storm with sometimes you get the rainbows and that over the park, but if you ever have a real heavy rain and after it's done, if you're interested in taking photos, go around the Eiffel Tower and where there's puddles and that around the tower, you can get a reflection of the tower in that puddle, and that makes a really cool photo.
Yeah, I've seen people actually take reflections of the Eiffel Tower in the reflections of ornaments for the garland on International Street, which are really cool too. So I imagine yours are probably pretty neat. And I bet it's probably rainbow, an oil kind of thing on the top, because I bet there's so much stuff from people's shoes and blue ice cream and stuff like that. It's probably pretty dirty water, so it would make for really cool photos. But Don, I know that you and I are very well dressed, but we were asking ourselves, what can we do to make the listener as well dressed as us?
Well, they were very interested in, getting T-shirts made because they're fans of the show. They want to support the show, so they kept asking us about T-shirts. So we have T-shirts. They're in a North Carolina blue color. If you're interested, you can either send us a direct message on our X, or you can reach out to Ryan or I directly, and we'll get you all the information. The shirts, they run $22. That includes shipping, and once we get your order, they'll go out pretty quick. But it's a real comfortable T-shirt. Looks really sharp with that North Carolina blue color and up against our logo. And if you're interested in a shirt, we certainly would appreciate the support that you have for the show.
Yeah, so just shoot us a DM on X at Tower_Topics. just express your interest in what size shirt you wear, and we'll arrange for it. We'll use, I believe you guys use Venmo, right? It's
Venmo,
this is
yes.
Don. So we'll use Venmo for the transaction, and we'll get that shirt shipped out to you as quickly as possible. So it doesn't take long to make them. So it'd be very, very cool. So tweet at us, well, send us a DM on tower_topics. Let's move on to the listener question. So the first listener question comes from Chris Leach. He said, is there a plan to update Boo Blasters as a whole, vehicles, lasers, getting those targets to work consistently? Oh, Chris.
Well, it certainly needs an update. I think that's not lost. I think on people that work at the park, I think they know that that needs an update, or maybe something totally new in there. I know in recent years that different ideas have been pitched to the park about that. Ranging from Peanuts theme type attraction to other things. Should the merger go through with Six Flags, I think that opens up some possibilities of things that you can do in there. You're adding a couple of different IPs possibly that you could work with. So there's a lot of things there that could be done in that building, as we move forward. But it definitely needs some updates in there, because
Now,
nothing's more frustrated than to go ride through Boo Blasters on Boo Hill and your little gun's not working.
right. And to the park's credit, to be clear, because I know these people listen to the show, the tech services team puts an enormous amount of resources
A
into
lot
keeping
of
that
resources into
maintained.
that.
It's just that the technology sucks. So it's not them. It's if you look at King's Dominion and Carowinds and all those other parks, they've got the laser that shoots out of the gun, and it feels like all the targets work and stuff. A lot of that's illusionary because you can actually see where you're shooting, but this stuff is just old technology. I completely agree. It needs to be updated.
15 seasons old there.
My only ask is that we don't maintain the status quo. Put something in that's good, and it's not like the Centra cutouts of Peanuts characters or whatever. I don't want. If you're going to do that, then I'd rather just keep what we have.
Yeah, well, that's the one thing I think. If you look at Kings Island's lineup, that's missing is a really good immersive dark ride.
I agree. Yeah,
you got the building to do it, so, and you've got the track and everything to do it. So, it's just deciding to do it.
Yeah. Excellent. So next question is from Jake Bronson. He says, when a ride temporarily closes and ops have to call maintenance to check it out, what's the process for determining if a ride is okay to keep going or needs to be shut down for an extended period of time?
Well, I think it depends on what the issue is. I mean, normally it's an operational, mechanical, or electrical issue that shuts down a ride. Maybe a sensor is an issue, or electrical with the chain lift or something. It stops working. So a lot of those things, it's just a question identifying what the issue is, and then you usually get those fixed relatively quickly, and then it's just back to cycling the ride through, getting those tests done again that you do in the morning, and then the ride reopens. If it's a little more than that, and they just don't know, or something that might be reoccurring, like they keep having an issue with a sensor, or it could be something a few weeks ago, opening day of the Beast, the exit gate, they couldn't get that to close, the magnetic gate. They were having some issues with that, and that shut down the ride for a while. So it just depends on really what it is, and if it's something major, maybe they discover something out along the track, it doesn't sound right, when they're walking around, the perimeter, and the maintenance guys will do that, and it just sounds differently for them. They may shut it down for an extended period, maybe for a day, just to figure out what's going on there.
Yeah, so my understanding, and I am not a ride mechanic. We've had some on some of our shows before. I wish we had this listener question then for Ryan, the ride mechanic on Attractions Group podcast. But my understanding is that these things often are like any other computer, and maintenance has to go in, shut it down, turn it back on, cycle it, and it's good. Normally it's some sort of sensor fault. It's not a big deal or whatever.
Yeah.
For anything,
and these rides, these rides now, I mean, there's so much involved with some of them, so many different sensors. That's one of the reasons why Firehawk was down.
Yes.
So often, there was just too many sensors on each of the trains and everything, that it didn't take much to trigger it, and they'd have to shut it down. They always knew what it was, but again, it would take 20, 30 minutes or whatever to get that resolved and get the testing back in again, then reopen it again. So, as the technology improves, it creates more issues a lot of times with rides. You see a lot more downtime rides throughout the industry than you probably did, 20, 30 years ago.
You're also safer than you were ever
Oh, much,
before,
much
you
safer
know?
than you were before. Yeah, much safer than you were before. But yeah,
Yeah, so I guess the answer to your question from our point of view, it's like I'm sure there's far more technical is if maintenance shows up, oftentimes it's shut it off, turn it back on again, cycle it, good to go, then it reopens. But for almost anything else, and this is information derived from Ryan the Ride Mechanics videos, but the way I'm interpreting the way he kind of talked about it was uh if there's like a problem with one of the seats, they can just block off the seat, so you'll see
right,
that occasionally. But other than that, like if there's any kind of problem, it needs to get fixed before the ride can be open,
right,
so that's kind of it. There was some stuff that they used to do like in the Carney game, and some parks used to do it a long time ago, but now it's like definitely like dirty pool. But I think it's called jumping is a term they use when you would just rewire it so it thinks the sensor's down or the lap bar's down when it's up, because it always thinks it's up. So you basically bypass the sensor. But so maybe like your church carnival does that, but like any credible amusement park would not do that.
yeah.
So
You're not seeing that at a major theme park or most parks throughout the country. You're not seeing that.
yeah. Okay, great question. Hey, I'm Ryan Sir along with Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.